each group or a pair, just rearrange it in a loop.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a really nice variety of activities in these things. Some of them are better than others. This one, students were expected to, this is information, and then they're going to have to process all this information. This might be spread around the room, or it might be in a PowerPoint or whatever. This one is a personal story about a patient who has cancer and is going to be subjected to X-rays and gamma rays, and then they're given a task at the bottom there. They have to provide, interpret information for the benefit of the patient. And the last one says Wave uses quick quiz, so it's just a set of questions. Okay? So let's go back to my list of things that you need to think about when looking at worksheets, but also when revising them. As you were saying, when you get a worksheet like this, you often want to do things to it and make it appropriate to your class, make it appropriate to how you think it should be taught, and so on. So let's go through some of these things. This is what I would call a sort of thinking development worksheet, where you write notes on there, but it's not going to be a final product. I've written my own things to go in here, and I've got copies of that that I can give out at the end. But you might want to add notes as you go along on your one or whatever. So topic. What does topic mean? Very difficult.
What the topic is.
Yeah. So it's the subject matter, the physics subject matter that you're trying to get across, but obviously you have to think about that in terms of how it fits with what you've been doing before and after. Age and ability, again, that's fairly obvious. You're thinking about who the learners are, what have they done before, how able are they, what sort of demands are you putting on them, because any teaching experience has to have some level of demand in it, pushing them on further. You don't want it to be too great, but at the same time it's got to be asking something of them. What about this one, motivation and engagement? Stretching, yeah.
Classroom context, in terms of the engagement of the learners.
Yeah.
And motivating them to be engaged in the switch on.
Yeah. Okay. So
it's making them interested.
Yes, making them interested. And if you think about those worksheets, which would you say was the least likely to motivate?
Bombs at year 9 are not going to want to keep a
diary.
The last one. Yeah. Sorry. What were you going to?
I mean, if you tell your bottoms at year 9, go keep an electromagnetic diary, I don't think they'll enjoy it. But the last one, I think, is sort of higher level, and you tend to battle with motivation and engagement with lower attainments and ability generally, don't you?
Yeah. So more able, they're more likely to be ready to get on with it anyway. A lot of teachers rely on their own, the fact you build up momentum with the class, and they're happy to keep going. And
I think it links to both, because even with students of a higher ability, if it's not challenging enough, they're not going to be engaged in it. So there needs to be a level of challenge for them as well.
Yeah. And some of those worksheets show different levels of demand, don't they? The one about the medical history, I mean, that's clearly, somebody has thought about how will we engage these kids with X-rays and gamma rays, and then they've got levels of demand down here where this is, I find this is maybe a bit dubious what's being put here, but at least it shows they're thinking, how can we push, show kids that they're doing better, doing harder and harder things. So, yeah. So that's motivation and engagement. What was the next one? Context. Okay. So, in a way, that's related. Well, looking at those worksheets, which would you say was anything lacking in context, or?
Increased to me as syntax errors, the repetition of questions.
Yeah, that the quiz one at the end is completely devoid of context, really, isn't it? It's just, you know, you're at school, so you'll answer questions like this, and some of them the context is on the page. Some of them the context, like the woman with lung cancer. Some of them the context is probably more in the teacher, you know, what the teacher is going to say to introduce the activity. Okay, what about, what does activity mean?
What you're actually doing, the task.
Yeah, the task that's there. So you then have to think about how they're going to work at this. Are they going to be working together in groups? Are they going to be working individually? What sort of activity is it? And I think there's quite a variety in these worksheets, isn't there? Some of them are more physically active, and some of them are more sit and write and talk and think. Okay, so something maybe a bit more uncertain. Scaffolding. What does scaffolding refer to?
Building on top of the knowledge and different angles.
Yeah, building up knowledge and understanding. Building up, but within a resource sheet, within an activity sheet, you might want to start off with something that will help them get in, and then something that will gives them plenty of steps along the way, and then you might want to remove the scaffolding by giving them something more demanding at the end, or something similar, parallel, but without all the steps laid out, so that they can then feel that, you know, they've learnt it in the first half, and then they can carry it through for themselves in the second half, which is something I think is not really obvious in these worksheets. So. Okay, open and closed questions. What's the difference there?
First one's a yes or no answer.
Yes or no, or factual answers, or yeah, so based on recall, really. And
The other one opens up the discussion.
yeah, yeah. And can you see can you point to a worksheet here that would be very sort of open? The X-rays, yeah. That's a very closed one, isn't it? Except that I'm not quite sure what they're asking about. It says true, false, or partly true, which is different degrees of truth. Yes, but all it asks you to do is write true, false, or partly true in the box at the end. So
I think he said, why is it partly true?
yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, yeah. They haven't really. It hasn't.
But if I'm to use it, I'll go for true or false, and not partly.
We could say X-rays. Are they going to kill you?
Yeah,
Partly
so I was thinking, if you let someone under an X-ray for long enough, I suppose.
Then yes, it can kill you, but it's not definitely going to kill you. I quite like that. Partly true. Yeah,
Yes, well, yeah, but you need to take it further, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You would want them
Also
to be.
the time of exposure as well.
Yeah.
How long they're exposed for.
Yeah, so you need them to. You would want to ask them to elaborate on.
Yeah, because
On
if
that.
there's no need for elaboration, then I don't see the purpose of that.
No, what do you end up with? A
Yeah.
sheet of paper. Some statements are false, and some statements are true, and some are partly true.
You
It's
very
just-
rarely just throw a worksheet at a kid, would you? Like, you explain sort of what you're doing. So all of them, I think, have their benefits. Like, it depends how you deliver it and how you
Yeah.
set sort of your work up. Because you're never
Yeah.
just going to go, right, here, do this to a kid like you. That's part of your lesson.
Well, you shouldn't do, should
Yeah,
you?
you know what I mean? I think it's how
Yeah.
you deliver it. So if you spoke
Yes.
about that partly true bit, and you think, you know, some of these might not be entirely true,
Yeah.
and why do you think that is? And it could be quite
Then
Yes,
one that
But
knows-
you were saying why you're going to ask them why is it only partly
Yeah.
true? How are they going to fit that in that little box? It's
Yeah.
Well,
Quite
it's
difficult.
But sort of the resource is only half the story. It's the execution of that, I think, which is
Yeah.
equally as important.
And like I say, and
Yeah.
just, I mean, I know a worksheet, it's meant to have things written down, but I think equally important is some sort of classroom discussion as well, so you can get a discussion from that as well.
yeah, yeah.
Except, particularly this particular one was used as a quick fire test, just for the teacher to observe what is going on, rather actually like
Yes, I don't know. You know, if it was me, if I was the student and I was sitting next to you, I'd be looking to see what you're writing down, and I'd be
definitely just writing it.
Yeah.
copying it or maybe
Sending
nudging
it
you
off.
and saying, "Why have you done that?" But I'm not sure that that kids learn terribly much from filling in a sheet like that. Okay. All right, so formative and summative. I'm sure these are words you've got.
Methods of assessment.
Well, they're methods of assessment, yes. So, and how do they relate to a resource, an activity
So
sheet?
the formative one might be helping you form your understanding, whereas the
Yeah.
summative one might be testing your
Yeah.
understanding.
Okay. And if you looked at these particular examples, can you see, well, what would be
Summative, we've got the end.
summative, that last? Yes.
Formative.
It's a bit of a nerve calling it a quick quiz, isn't it? I mean, I think a quiz is supposed to be fun, isn't it? And
This is very serious stuff actually.
yes, very serious and written in a strange order. And
We've got this one can kind of form your understanding a little bit if you've got the answers there for you. So
you,
slowly kind of realise
yes,
where they go.
you've got to then discuss with somebody else why they should be standing next to you, or why you should put this one next to that one, or So, but you need to, you need to have decided as you go along whether your activity sheet is going to be a formative one, or is it going to be a summative one, or is it going to be formative at the beginning and summative at the end. Otherwise, you you can get yourself in a terrible tangle with. I've seen worksheets where there are 3 questions that are true, false, and then there's one that requires about 2 pages of writing, and then there's a diagram that you've got to write some labels on, and you think, well, what is this person's idea of this resource sheet? They've just written down everything they could think about that they might give to their students. Okay, what about gradient and ramping? What would that mean?
Getting harder.
Getting harder, yeah.
Quite
So-
like this is a method of differentiation, that rather than having different sheets which can be quite off-putting to certain students.
Yeah.
Differentiation by outcome.
Yes, okay, so, yes. It's to do with differentiation, but also to do with helping to build up the concepts so that they are learning as they go through it, and getting harder as it goes on. Okay, so, and different students will, you don't want something where half the class is going to get to question 1 and that's all they're going to be able to do, but so you do need to have some notion of how you're going to get them up the hill. What about language? Any thoughts on language in resource sheets?
Being aware of how you're asking a question,
Mm-hmm.
because you could word it in a way where it just doesn't make sense
Yeah.
to the kids.
Or you might ask a question in a very convoluted way, and often you can make things you can think of a way to make it much simpler. Any other thoughts about?
Scientific or layman.
Yes, that's quite a big issue, really. Scientific language against layman's language. Keywords, yeah.
Do they know the
Because-
definition of keywords?
Because it is a big problem, and some people think they solve it by using everyday terminology, but actually everyday terminology is not. It doesn't do the job in physics, really, does it? Somehow they've got to get to the point of being able to use appropriate terminology, but then they can be lost. You can lose them very easily if you just have too much of it. But if you do just try writing down using some everyday term instead of a technical term like energy or momentum or something, then you aren't doing them any favours, are you?
Yeah,
So,
science is lost.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the language bit also, because I had an experience wherein I was advised to tune in to the students, use their language, but then say a word like vibration, which is very sensitive to them. You have to explain something, which other word you have to use to do that. I think language there plays an important role.
Yeah.
If you dodge from vibration to use oscillations, or you say move up and down, it doesn't really give the information you wanted to deliver, but because it's causing a lot of excitement and fidgeting.
Yeah.
Even some of the mark schemes that you get is highly problematic sometimes. When you try to correct papers,
Yeah.
the language in there, they do kind of acknowledge the fact that every student not only uses scientific language.
Yeah. So they give you the option of
For
acceptable
example, there was
alternatives.
definition of frequency. This is the first time I heard the number of complete waves per second. Which,
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah. So. Yeah, so they do have to learn definitions, but there's no point in just learning definitions if they don't have some kind
they
of
they can understand,
yeah.
that's probably
Yeah,
why
that's why
they
they'll talk about
can
that. Yeah.
find it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could have done a whole workshop on language, really, but I think you've mentioned some of the important points. One of the worksheets, the this, which one was it? This one here has these blocks of text that that go in the boxes in the table, and actually you can save. You know, if kids are doing this on a computer, they can, copy and paste, or drag and drop and that kind of thing, and that can be a great saving to some kids who don't want to spend all their time, find it difficult to spend all their time writing, and and equally there are some children whose favourite activity is doing nice, neat writing and not necessarily thinking about what they're doing, cutting and pasting and making it all look lovely. Yeah. So this is, but this, as I say, it's not a bad thing to be able to take that and stick it in the appropriate box, and then you end up with they've had to think about it to get it there without having to necessarily copy out words that are not terribly familiar. Okay. The next one, outputs. What do you think that refers to?
What I'm trying to get out of this worksheet, what it is producing.
What are they producing? Yeah. Are they going to produce anything? Because some of these things, like if they stand around the room with the whatever that one's called, the word chain, the word loop. What are they going to end up with? Well, you said you've used it. Is that right?
Yeah, it was like a starter.
Okay. So you weren't too worried about them producing something at the end?
It was a loop. Actually, I cut it out. So as they were pasting it, it formed a complete loop.
Yeah.
And so you could just hung it anywhere.
Yeah.
One student mainly just put it on his neck.
Yeah. Okay.
So it would kind of just play things.
So there's a product in there in the sense that they would have felt satisfied that they got to the end of it, and presumably it was checked in some way, and yeah.
Some will form notes as well. Will form formal notes for them in their books.
Yeah.
And some less so. I mean, it's what do you want out of it? Is it the learning? But then are they really going to remember that thing?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's great to have a great discussion, and a lot of them will think a lot. But then, 3 years down the line, if you teach GCSE in year 9, despite that thinking, how do they remember it?
Or when they get to the exam in year 11.
Do they actually go back and read their books, or do they use a revision? You've got to weigh it all up, haven't you?
Yeah. Occasionally you see worksheets where there's like a load of text and then one or two questions at the end and a little line for them to write their answer on. And you think, well, what was the point of all that if they end up with this sheet with just one thing that they've written at the end? So you want to think about what is it actually they're going to end up with. It may not be anything directly from the sheet. It may be that you will then tag on at the end some talk your way through some notes, or draw a conclusion and ask them to write it in their own words or something like that. So the last thing I put on here was additional resources. What might that refer to?
Maybe like a whole corner or stuff around the room.
Yeah.
I think that would be in addition to the improve their knowledge on the learning objective.
Yeah.
Around that.
So you may give them a resource sheet, but they may need to, as you say, maybe things around the room or wherever that they're going to have to draw on in order to complete the activity. Sometimes it may be entirely on the sheet. You may be able to get everything they need on a sheet, which is quite a good thing. It's good for homework, because you can't rely on everybody to have access to whatever. But you've got to think about, you've got to think, are they going to be drawing on other things, and the other resources might be the people they're working with or whatever. Okay, well, all those things, I think there are important things to think about if you're first of all, if you're writing your own resources, but if you're evaluating somebody else's and thinking about how you're going to adapt it for your own use. they don't all apply to everything you do. You don't have to do all these, hit all these targets on everything that you produce, obviously, but you just need to be thinking about it so that you're clear about what it is you're doing. If you just sit and start writing, I just write a worksheet on this, then you haven't really thought about the whole sort of context and what, actually my feeling is the most important thing always is start thinking what's the activity going to be, how are you going to get these, you've got your physics topic and you've got to think about what's the activity going to be, and that really focuses your mind on how it's going to work. And it's not always easy to think of a good activity, so that's one of the reasons why it's good to look at places like the Times Ed website and so on. Right, the next thing I wanted to do was really for you to look at these worksheets again in the light of what we've been talking about, choose one and think about how you would improve it, how you could make it better so that you got more out of it. Because some of these I think are a bit thin in terms of what will come out of them, but just by adapting one you might be able to get quite a lot more out of it and make it more. We have mentioned one or two things that could be improvements already, but so have a look through, decide one that you feel could be improved, and when you've done that, can you suggest work in pairs, explain to each other what your idea is, and then we'll spend in about between 5 and 10 minutes, we'll go around, and what I would like you to do is explain to us what the other person has thought of as the improvement, which worksheet it is and how they suggest it will be improved. Okay, so if you two could work together when you've had a look through and decided what it is, and we'll and two and two. Okay, I don't know who's been discussing which one. Did anybody choose this one as their example? You did? So you're going to report on his ideas.
So the ideas were, and just a simple one would be to change the colours around, just for kids to sort of associations. So effects we think should be in red, because especially with sort of gamma rays associated with
red for danger,
that sort of thing. So we'd change the colour around. And then also they could do this, but we're thinking to combine that and then use the one about the person with cancer as sort of like an extension task.
All right, yeah.
So they go through the sort of like the type of radiation, the uses of it. So that's just some sort of general recall, but then move on to this next one as sort of an application of that knowledge then. So that's sort of the idea.
Yeah, good.
Discussed.
So plenty of.
Did I miss anything that you said?
Yeah, just reordering, making sure that he started with gamma rays, but I will start with radio waves and coming that order.
Why?
Even in the textbooks, it started with the radio waves, and the kids, most often we teach it from radio waves to gamma rays, and we show them the training energies and wavelength.
Because you want to start with low energy and move up to high energy. Is that the okay?
They always know that.
I have seen an exam question though where they have put them the other way around, but then you're relying on the fact, just praying that the kids have actually understood it and not just learned the pattern of sort of left to right gets smaller.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Well, I'm not convinced that prayer is going to work in this case, but yeah. Okay, that's good. That's interesting. Yes. So, anybody else looked at this one? No. Okay. Well, we've heard a little bit about this one, Mrs. Jones's medical problems. Anybody tackle that one?
Yeah. I looked at it, and two good ideas she came up with. Obviously, this involves writing a letter, some description by the radiogram. One of the thoughts is actually to have some kind of model letter, may not be the same scenario, but something along the lines of guiding as to how to write this letter.
Yeah. Because the idea of asking them to write a letter is quite a daunting thing if they can't see something that's a model. Okay.
The other one is actually turn this on the head and add as kind of an exam question, like an exam style question, based on this analysis and facts.
Yeah, I think you were saying put a tag an exam, more of an exam type question at the end, so that in a way that drags it back to the sort of school learning scenario, doesn't it? Whereas this is sort of real world, and Yeah. Okay. Anybody any thoughts about that?
Maybe like a writing frame. I know that's sort of what you're getting at, but even if it's not just an example, because an example they can go, I know, I'll just sort of change the word, change X-rays for gamma rays, you know, but just to write, I use sentence starters all the time, provide sentence starters, because I find a lot of kids, they know what they're doing, but they just don't know how to get started. Like, they will never know how to get started, so I would just provide a sentence, like a writing frame where it's like, you could start with this sentence and move on to this and this.
So you would put, are you like giving them like paragraph beginnings and
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Which one should we look at next? What about did anybody do the electromagnetic diary? No. Well, I did. My thought was, actually that would be quite nice. It would be a lot nicer if it was actually a fantasy day rather than, maybe you go off to the space launch pad and go up into space and whatever, so you've got much more opportunity or you go to the hospital. The day you have to go to the hospital and you get X-rayed and you get this, that, and the other, and rather than some kind of, because I can't think of anything else after those two really. Did my toast with infrared radiation. Okay, so yeah. Did anybody do anything with this one? No. The quiz, that had one or two people doing things.
So he suggested.
Oh, 2 people did it.
I did it.
He did as well.
Oh, you did as well. Okay, well let's hear let's hear
He suggested
this one first.
rewording the questions, so maybe giving some of the answers and taking out, so like taking out radio and gamma and giving the answer to electromagnetic spectrum.
So would you present that then as you would write the answer here and just have gaps here? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's more like stating the facts in terms of these are the components or the members of the radio, electromagnetic spectrum, and
Okay, so it wouldn't be a question and answer. It would be a statement.
of fact.
Okay.
You say the idea was to kind of help them think out. They might remember it that way, rather than have these questions and then just completely go blank. Some of the other ones was to give them a choice of answers, some even silly answers, so they can pick out some right answer, and using pictures to illustrate some of these concepts, like total internal infection, because they'll be used to seeing diagrams.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah, for kids who find all the pages of words difficult, just to have a picture gives you the clue as to what you should be thinking about, and
I think it happens in exams. You never really get a question that doesn't have a picture or graph, something like that.
Yeah.
And interpretation skills are really important.
Yeah. So on one here, yes, what was there?
I think he spoke of reordering the questions, making sure they build information as they increase.
Yeah.
As actually grouping the questions, grading them, differentiating them by outcome.
Yeah.
Those questions, not just putting them as a
They're in a pretty arbitrary order, aren't they? They don't even all match the title. They don't all match the title, do they?
We also try to tweak or change the language. Even noted question 6 and 11 seem to be asking the same thing, but there's
yes.
an omission in question 8. So
Yeah.
then alter them whether open or closed questions as well.
Yeah.
That's what
Are these all closed? I can't remember now.
Most of them
Most.
are. You could argue, I suppose, what can the effects, so saying by what can be an effect of long-term exposure to radiation. I suppose that's sort of open. Yeah. I mean,
but the
they
teachers,
I suppose, in terms of an exam, they'll have a set mark scheme in the head of, right, if I'm talking about effects, I should be able to say these things. But you could make it a more open question, I suppose. But yeah, I was just saying, like I said, group them, because some of them are characteristics and properties of waves, some of them are more EM spectrum. Yeah. So I would group them. Great, so put them in order of sort of difficulty and harder.
Maybe put little headings in so that they know where maybe, put something